How do you filter through? So you send your book to beta readers, you send it to an editor, whoever, all these people that have opinions about your
Mhm.
work. How do you filter through the things that are like, this is a real thing that needs to be fixed, like this thing about a character needs to
Mhm.
change, or the things that are more just like an opinion. So like, it's not really what you did isn't needing fixed, but it's like, how do you filter through those kinds of things?
It's difficult. Early on, I had a pretty large team. And I think as you're starting, it's important to just try to have as many people get eyes on it as possible so you can find your people because you want readers they're not afraid to, suggest and correct you and critique you. But you also want them to have a vision that's in line with yours.
Mm-hmm.
So I've definitely had beta readers where I could just tell like this person is probably not my ideal reader or they probably don't get my vision and that's okay,
Mm-hmm.
but then you want to be careful to not take everything they say at face value. So I've gotten my team to a point where I have basically my critique partner who either reads it live with me like as I'm drafting, we'll do like a kind of a Google Doc share on our projects, or she'll just alpha read, but I basically have three stages of like critical reading before it goes to editing. So critique partner and then alpha readers and then beta readers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a handful of people now. And I like how it's kind of like I've gotten this group that I can really trust their advice to the point now where one of them says something, I'm like, oh, you're so right. It
Mm-hmm.
just, it makes sense. But earlier on, before I had like that solid team, I would first ask myself, like, you're gonna like bristle at it, or at least I did, to any kind of constructive feedback. Like
Yeah.
I initially go, you don't get my vision, your opinion sucks,
Right.
you don't even want to like think about it. So
Yeah.
I would like read through it in doses and then just step away
Mm-hmm.
and then come back to it like usually at least a few minutes to a few hours later, just so I can clear my head. And then a lot of them are like just gut feelings. I'm like, okay, this is right. Like I deep down, even though I don't want to change this, I do agree with it and I see it.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's something that I don't agree with and I don't see, or I feel like it's coming away from my vision, but it possibly could still be good advice, I kind of set that in a maybe pile and I wait till I get another person's feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And if enough people are pointing at the same thing, then I'm like, okay, this probably is an issue, even if I don't see it. And then there's some where I'm just like, you just know that this is just somebody's opinion and this does not at all jive with what I'm trying to do. So
Yeah.
that goes in the trash. So kind of just those stages, but having the maybes and being able to weigh them against other people's feedback has been huge for me. Cause I had, just even on my most recent project, I had one person who kind of wanted me to change something because they felt like it was kind of taking away from the pacing or whatever. But then I had my other two beta readers be like, this is so cool. I love having this thing in here and I want more of it. And so if I have more people saying, yes, do this, and it feels right with me, then I just continue with it.
Yeah.
But
And we kind of touched on this a little bit throughout, but how do you, again, this kind of goes hand in hand with that. So you get the book out and now you get reviews and criticism, and what is that process like? I'm sure there's parts that are just like, this is so terrible, but then there's other parts that are really great.
it's so painful. I thought that having spent a few years of my life acting and like dealing with rejection, like literally, like there were times where I walked into like an audition and they would just like put the script, like they just look at their phones before I even started because I already didn't meet their vision of the character. So like I've dealt with so much rejection that I thought acting would be or writing would be such a cinch, especially after going through like the querying trenches. I'm like, I can take any feedback, but the very first negative review I got just stuck with me.
Yeah.
And I think the hardest thing is not obsessively seeking them out. I went through a
Mm-hmm.
period when I first published where like I was on Goodreads multiple times a day and
Yeah.
just like looking to see like, did anybody new or review me? What are they saying? And it was really unhealthy because even when you see a good one, like at least for me, again, I fixate on the bad, and I could get like so many positive ones in a row and get this one that wasn't even that mean and maybe just critiqued this part or this didn't work for them. And I'm like, I'm horrible. I'm ruined. I shouldn't be writing. I'm an imposter.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things where I just try to not go on very often and look at them. And then when I do, I try to make sure that I am in a good headspace. And I try to look at them as if I was looking at somebody's reviews of somebody else's book. And that really helps me to make it not so personal, because most of the time it really isn't. I have one review that I think is a little personal, but for the most part, I think it's just people, this doesn't work for me, or, this or this. And it's just not letting, in order for me to not let the bad reviews hit so hard, I also don't let the good reviews hit so hard. So I'm kind of more in a place where like, this is just all feedback and it is what it is. And I'm just going to take what I can from it and keep doing my thing. Because if focusing on any positive or negative feedback too much for me just kind of sets me in a spiral. And then my one cure for when I really am struggling with bad reviews is I go to my favorite authors who I idolize and I read their bad reviews. I'm like, if people think they're bad, then there's hope for me.
Yeah, it's the I've gotten a thicker skin after doing YouTube, because you get all sorts of like, I think most people have good intentions, even if they leave you a negative review. I think most people generally are like, it's probably decent feedback. But there's always those people that sometimes will just say something like, why'd you even say that? Like, that was just not even nice. I get comments like, I got one not too long ago that was like, you move your hands too much. And I was like, what? Like, what do you... What? Sorry, like, so it's that. So yeah, it's you just gotta, the internet's a wild place. You just gotta take what you can and get rid of the rest, I suppose.
Yes.
Yeah.